All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we're talking about something I think is super cool. We're diving deep into the world of import-export.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and not just like, any old import-export. We're talking specifically about glassware coming from China. I
Yeah.
mean, think about it. How often do you pick up a delicate glass, so like a wine glass or even just a drinking glass, and wonder like, whoa, this actually made it here all the way from China?
It's amazing when you think about it.
Totally. So our guide for this deep dive is this really cool career guide I found from RoleCatcher. And they're basically giving us the inside scoop on what it takes to be an import-export specialist, focusing on this China glassware connection. It's fascinating, actually. There's more to it than you might think. So, let's just get right into it. When we say import-export specialist, what are we really talking about here? Is it just like paperwork and customs forms all day?
Well, it definitely involves those things, but it's so much more dynamic than you might imagine.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. At its core, an import-export specialist is ensuring goods, in this case glassware, move smoothly and legally across international borders, especially with a manufacturing powerhouse like China.
Right.
So you're right, there's paperwork, there are regulations, but it's also about problem solving, it's about negotiation, cultural awareness. It's actually kind of a global bridge between these two
Right,
countries.
I would not have thought of it like that. The guide mentions that it can be a low-stress environment, though. Is that, like, really the case? I mean, I just imagine with shipments going back and forth, customs regulations, fragile glassware.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not your average 9 to 5. There are deadlines, there's pressure, and let's face it, stuff happens. You could have a shipment delayed because of, I don't know, a typhoon in the Pacific
Yeah.
or maybe a sudden change in customs regulations, and you've got to think fast, find solutions, keep those glasses from, well, piling up on the docks somewhere.
I never really pictured it that way. I was thinking more like a quiet office, so why glassware? What makes it so interesting for this career, other than the, whole fragile thing?
The fragile thing is huge. Think about it. You've got delicate, often hand-blown pieces traveling thousands of miles. You need specialized knowledge of packaging, handling. Even the insurance is a whole other ballgame.
I wouldn't even know where to begin with that.
Exactly. You're not just an expert in the process, you have to be an expert in the product too, especially when it comes to something like glassware. It's way more than just slapping it in a box and hoping for the best.
That's wild. Okay, so let's talk China for a minute. It's obviously a manufacturing powerhouse, but it also has very specific business culture. How does that impact the job of an import-export specialist, like on a day-to-day basis?
It really does. I mean, it's about building relationships, understanding cultural nuances. You can't just waltz in with a Western mindset and expect everything to go smoothly.
Right, it's about more than just getting the paperwork right.
Exactly. Like, did you know that gift giving is a huge part of Chinese business culture? And I don't mean just like a coffee mug or something. We're talking elaborate, thoughtful gifts, chosen carefully to honor the recipient. It's a whole thing.
It sounds like a minefield.
It can be if you're not prepared. But that's part of the job. A good import-export specialist understands those nuances, avoids those faux pas. It's all about building trust, showing respect.
Wow. It really emphasizes what the guide said about this job being truly global. You're not just moving products. You're navigating different ways of life, different ways of thinking.
100%, yeah. And speaking of global, this career path can take you to some interesting places too, figuratively and literally.
Oh, okay. So, like, what does the career ladder look like for someone in this field? Is it pretty straightforward or?
It's a good mix, honestly. The guide lays out the traditional path. You start as an assistant, work your way up to manager, maybe even director level. But the cool part is the specialization.
Oh, tell me more about that. What kind of specializations?
Well, you could become a real expert in international shipping regulations. That's a big one. Or you could focus on logistics, optimizing those supply chains to get those glasses from the factory floor to the showroom floor as smoothly as possible. Some people even specialize in a specific product.
Right.
Yeah, so you could become like the glassware guru of the import-export world. Your expertise would be invaluable, especially with a market as specialized as China.
That's amazing. So you could really carve out your own niche even within this larger field.
Exactly. And let's not forget the entrepreneurial route. You could even start your own import-export firm.
Okay, so for our listeners who are like completely hooked now on thinking, this is it. This is the career for me.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them based on what you're seeing in this RoleCatcher guide?
Network, network, network. That's
Yeah.
huge in this industry. Go to trade shows, join industry associations, connect with people already doing the work. RoleCatcher actually has a great directory on their website.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and don't underestimate the power of hands-on experience.
Right.
An internship, even if you're not fresh out of school, can be invaluable.
Right, because it's one thing to read about it, but it's a whole other thing to actually, like, do it right. Get your hands dirty, so to speak.
Exactly. And don't discount any previous experience you might have, even if it doesn't seem directly related. Customer service, logistics, project management, those skills are all transferable and super valuable in this field.
Makes sense. So even if you haven't, like, shipped a container across the Pacific before, there's still ways to leverage what you already know. Okay, speaking of shipping containers, let's get back to the glassware itself for a moment. The guide talks about specialized packaging being like absolutely crucial for something this fragile.
Yeah.
It's not just like bubble wrap in a prayer.
Whoa, no, we are way past bubble wrap here. We're talking custom design crates, sometimes even double-walled for extra strength.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, and inside those crates, forget packing peanuts. Think form-fitting foam inserts molded specifically to the shape of each glass, and in some cases, you're talking climate-controlled containers, especially for like really high-end pieces.
To control like humidity and temperature and all that.
Exactly, because those ocean voyages, you know those can get intense. Those temperature swings can wreak havoc on delicate glassware.
Wow, so much more to it than I ever would guessed. It's like a science. No wonder this guide stresses the specialized knowledge needed for glassware imports.
Oh, for sure. It's not just about protecting the goods either. A good import-export specialist understands that time equals money. Those shipments are on tight deadlines, and any delay, especially for fragile items, that can translate to some serious losses.
Right, because then a shop might not have its products in time for like a big holiday rush or something.
Exactly, it's all connected. And speaking of things that are connected, let's not forget about insurance, because insuring a shipment of, say, hand-blown wine glasses from China, that's a bit more complicated than insuring, your new phone you ordered online.
I was just thinking that, like, what does that even look like?
So you're talking about something called all-risk marine cargo insurance, which covers pretty much everything you can think of: damage, theft, even delays due to like those typhoons we talked about or port strikes.
It's like they've thought of every possible thing that could go wrong.
Pretty much. And it's another detail that an import-export specialist needs to understand inside and out to make sure those precious glasses are protected every step of the way.
So to wrap things up, for our listeners out there, especially the ones who are now fascinated by glassware and China and all the things we've talked about, what's the key takeaway here?
This career path, it's not just about moving boxes from point A to point B, though it is that too. But when you're dealing with something as specialized as glassware and a market as complex and fascinating as China, it becomes this amazing blend of cultural awareness, logistical expertise, problem solving, you name it.
It sounds like you really do kind of have to be like a jack of all trades.
In a way, yeah. You're learning constantly, adapting to new challenges, and who knows, maybe you'll even get to travel to China and see those factories firsthand.
Now that is what I call a perk. It's been amazing, though, really eye-opening to go beyond the surface with you and explore all the ins and outs of this career. So for all of you listening, the next time you reach for that glass of water or that elegant wine glass, take a second to think about the journey it took to get to your hands. And maybe even a little shout out to those import-export specialists who made it all happen.